My name is Lohan DaCosta, and we're here with Mike Coleman. This is the Mind Equity Podcast. Mike, can you give them a little intro just for people that don't know who you are?
Sure. I'll keep it as short as possible. So my name is Mike Coleman. I'm an entrepreneur. I own a real estate company, but I have my hands on a lot of things. So my background's in social work. I've worked as a foster care case manager for CYS. I help run a group home for teenagers currently outside of Baltimore. I've been there for 20 years, and that's in Baltimore. In Pennsylvania, I have the real estate company, and I'm a lawyer. So I work with kids in the system. I do some pro bono, some advocacy work, and just try to do what I can for the community while making some money along the way.
I think that's a good place to start, because you've come very far. And some people that get into entrepreneurship have this idea that you just become an entrepreneur and you make a lot of money and you just have to work really hard for 2 years, 3 years tops. 3 years tops, and then you made it, right?
Yeah, that sounds great.
When you were going through your education and you started to realize, okay, like it's a lot of schooling to become a lawyer, but then you also had a passion for real estate and entrepreneurship. Did you get the passion for real estate and entrepreneurship at the same time while you were in school for law?
It's a loaded question and loaded answer. So I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I never planned to sell real estate. I never planned to own a company. When I initially went to school in Maryland, it was for finance because I wanted to work on Wall Street. And my goal of working on Wall Street was to get on the trading floor, make billions of dollars, have the cars and the yachts and all of the finer things and never look back. And that was my focus leaving high school into college. However, about 2 months probably into my freshman year, I went to the dining hall as I did every day. And on the table was a little card and it said, hey, work with at-risk kids in this program. And I thought, well, I have a couple hours on my hands. Why not? So I joined the program. They assigned me this kid. He was 11. I met him at the dish return station in the dining hall because this program would bus kids onto campus and we would have dinner with them. We would do their homework with them and go to the game room. I'll never forget the first thing he ever said to me. I introduced myself to him and he said, oh, my brother's name was Mike too, but he's dead now. And I had no idea what I was getting into. But I started working with him. His name's Rodney. I'm still in touch to this day. He sparked something in me that I didn't recognize before, and that was a passion for helping others. I absolutely loved the work of trying to get him to overcome the hurdles that he'd face. He's been through an insane amount of adversity. And so working with him, I ended up leaving my finance major to become a social work major. My family thought I was out of my mind, and I probably was. But I realized that there was more to life than just making money. A few years later, when he was 15, my parents adopted him as my little brother. And so I moved him to Pennsylvania when he was 15 and raised him until he was 18. Transferred to Widener to finish my social work degree. And all of the advocacy that he required within the school system, both in Baltimore and then up here, led me to law school because we had amazing people helping us advocate for what he needed. And I said, okay, I want to be able to do for others what was done for us. And so that's what led me to law school. I still had not thought about selling real estate, but when I was getting ready to go to law school, I had to leave my social work job. And I'd seen my uncle do well in real estate. And I said, okay, I'll get my license and I'll make some money part-time while I'm in school, and then I'll get out and be a big shot attorney. And that was the plan. And then real estate kind of took off. I apparently was pretty good at it. I dropped out of law school twice, which is why it took me 7 years to finish. But I realized that this was something that I could grow to as big as possible, and it would let me do the rest of the things I love doing. And that's kind of how we got here.
As you started to scale your real estate business and you still had a passion for foster care, how did you take care of yourself psychologically? Like, were there any kind of like things that you had to like mature or more patience that you had to have in certain areas?
Well, I was in therapy for 7 years. So let's just start with that. No, I mean, mental health is so important and physical health is so important. I think we oftentimes don't do enough about either of those. I would say I've probably not done the best at either. I burnt myself out to an extreme degree. I will say part of this journey also included my parents losing their house to foreclosure when I was 19. Didn't know that was coming. And so after being removed from my childhood home by the sheriff's department with zero notice, it kind of awoke something in me, which was, I'm going to work my butt off because apparently it's on me now. And so that summer I had 5 jobs. I worked around the clock. I barely slept. I would come home, I would have dinner, I would fall asleep at the dinner table and wake up and go back to work. And that's what I did the entire summer, because it was from a place of fear that, okay, I thought I had a stable place. It's gone now. I have no one else to rely on except for me. And honestly, my older brother who took me in when this happened, it awoke a drive that became unhealthy as well, because I started working 80, 100 hours a week until I landed myself in the hospital because my body was like, this is enough. I don't regret it now. I did it at the time, but now it put something in me that I carry forever. And it's a work ethic that most people don't have. But I also have to learn to kind of temper it a little bit and, have some balance and go have some fun.
So that's the thing, right? Like with entrepreneurs, I think that successful ones, we kind of all run into this, like you'll discover that your superpower is that you're a hard worker, and that you have a brilliant mind. And so you do that for a few years and you start seeing like real results. And it just starts to become an actual identity. You wake up and know that you can depend on yourself to work hard. And over the course of the years, you start to have enough self-awareness to, try to take care of your mental health, right? What advice would you give to someone who, let's say they have a brand new business, it hasn't even been open for a year yet, and they are pushing themselves to that burnout point? What advice would you give to them when it comes to managing their energy for the long term? You know what I mean?
I'm going to give some advice that I don't necessarily always take myself, but I know that it works. I'm around a lot of successful people and I see how they operate and I see the common denominators a little bit. One thing I would say is if you can get a coach, get a coach. I wish I had a coach early on. With that comes an expense, which not everybody has. Get a mentor at least who's been there, done that, and can guide you, and who's already kind of failed forward and, done some of the things that you might do that they can advise you against to help alleviate some of those hardships and the disappointments. Mentorship is normally free, so you can normally find a mentor in whatever you're trying to do, and then eventually get a coach that has been wildly successful in what you do and is willing to help you do the same for a fee, of course. I have a friend of mine who's a colleague, and she is one of the most respected people in the business, and she got to where she is because at her very lowest point in life, she hired a coach, and they got her not only through her tough time, but to the best time of her life. Get someone that's on your team that's already been there, done that will help you. I don't say that I was in therapy for 7 years lightly. It was money well spent that I didn't always have, but it got me through some of the most challenging periods of my life. And I think that we generally don't necessarily take mental health as seriously as we should. There's a stigma against needing a therapist or a psychiatrist, but sometimes we do, and they can definitely help you see things that you have not recognized or haven't because you're in your own little bubble. They're on the outside looking in and can help you see things that you wouldn't otherwise.
Do you have like any like mental health habits, or any, like, if you gave someone, like, you were a therapist, for an entrepreneur, what would you tell them are some habits that they should really focus on?
Give yourself breaks. It's not black or white. Like a break for me might look different than a break from you. But one little tiny thing that I do is when I'm having lunch, I'm not working. I'm watching something that I want to watch. I'm not working. I'm not answering emails or texts. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm just having a meal and I'm watching something. And it might be 5 minutes, it might be 30 minutes, it might be an hour. But for that little period of time, like that's my space. I will not answer the phone. I don't care if the building's on fire. Carry me out. But I'm watching something because I'm eating. And I try to do that actually for all of my meals. I only kind of thought about that more in looking at the questions for today. But like that's the one thing I've been able to do consistently. Another thing that has certainly worked, but I fell off of, is the gym, which I need to get back to. Having that space in the morning to like get up and do something physical. Everyone you talk to that's successful probably goes to the gym at some point. And I'm pretty sure you do. That's something I need to get back to because I fell off. I got busy and I got distracted and I stopped taking the time for that. But that's on my list for actually this week.
I actually go for 3 walks a day. That's my gym. And also, like, just carrying around all this like camera equipment. It's heavy, man. Like these lights and all that. I want to ask another question. When it comes to taking on risks, you know what I mean? That's something that new entrepreneurs need to get good at. Like, just because you're busy doesn't mean you're being productive. What would you say is like something that you pay attention to when it comes to like taking on new risks? Like what questions do you ask yourself?
It's a good question.
A lot of successful people are great at saying no, you know?
Yeah, and I think for a lot of successful people, it's a journey to get to that point because a lot of times we're successful because we say yes to everything. I have my hands in 50 different pots right now, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. It's a drain mentally, and so I've really had to start saying, all right, what is serving my purpose next? With where I am now, with what I want to do in 2026, with the priorities that I need to make sure are accomplished, is this serving that? And actually, this isn't really answering your question, but it's kind of related to what I was just saying. saying, next week on Tuesday will be a huge day for me because it'll be my last day of teaching Taekwondo ever. And I've been part of that program for 30 years as of January. And I took the program over in 2011, so 14 years later. But I finally had to say, you know what, it's been great. It has served its purpose, but it's not part of the next chapter. And I need that time back. I need the energy back. And it was hard. I've had to accept that there's only so many hours in the day. How much time is it going to be? What's the return going to be? The return not necessarily being money, but what's the return going to be? And is this worth it? And I've gotten much better at saying, you know what, this is a great opportunity, but it's not for me right now.
I think that last word is so important, right now. Sometimes we'll try to over prepare, you know what I mean? Like we have like a vision of success, and so we're like trying to plan ahead, but really, what you need to focus on the most is the present. When it comes to self-awareness, we talked about how powerful it can be to have a coach, or some form of an accountability partner. If you were mentoring, what are 3 questions that you would have them ask themselves on a daily basis, like at the very end of the day?
One of the questions they should be asking is, whatever the initiatives that I'm working on right now, and they could be big, they could be small, did the activities that I took place in today move those forward in some meaningful way? I put a lot of pressure on myself because no matter how much I do in a day, I always know I could have done more, which is not always true, but I feel like that. But did you move something forward in a meaningful way? And I think to your point earlier, you're actually making me kind of self-reflect a little bit, but I think one question that we should be asking is, did we help ourselves? Like, did we take care of ourselves today? Maybe a third question would be, at least for me, it's really important, is how did I show up for my community? Because that's a big focus of everything that I do, is being able to then have that impact. So how did I show up? And for my family, am I making sure that I'm there for them and able to show up tomorrow in the same way or better so that they are getting where I want them to be down the line?
That's important, family first. What are we chasing success for? Whenever I talk to like successful people, like they've been through like so much and they learn from all these different areas and they find a way to take that hand and really use it to their advantage. My question is, as you grew as a parent, became more patient, found it in yourself to forgive your son and have no hard feelings towards his daughter, and she didn't ask to be in a part of any of this, but you have the responsibility to be the light for a lot of people. At points along your journey, you had to reflect and grow as a person. And so my question I have for you, once you did achieve quote unquote success, what mental challenges showed up that you didn't expect?
So I'm going to touch on a couple things you just said, because the journey of becoming a parent was insane and certainly a learning curve. However, part of that experience was also learning when to set boundaries and when to set accountability and when tough love was needed. And that's been the hardest part for me. Success, whatever that is, and money aside, my success on the personal side is that I finally set boundaries. I've worked with troubled teenagers since I was 20 years old. And I know what it's like to be in the system. I've worked with those kids forever, and I understand the challenges they face. I literally teach trauma-informed care to an entire facility. So I took that approach, and I'm proud of that because it allowed me to take a very different approach in my own home than most parents would have.
You're not parenting from your ego. You're parenting from, okay, what is the right thing to do here?
Yes, I like that. That's exactly right. At some point, even as a parent, you've got to draw the line. And that's being a parent, is saying, you know what, you now have to figure things out because I'm not going to keep enabling this.
How do you, maintain gratitude and self-love while, managing high pressure and constant responsibility?
I'm grateful for the responsibility. There's a level of like imposter syndrome a little bit sometimes. I get handed these amazing opportunities through Temple University where they're like, hey, we want you to design this curriculum. Or I teach at West Philly High School now, and I get to work with these incredible kids there inside of a business program. And it's nothing I ever saw myself doing. So those daily experiences where I'm inside this random Philly classroom on Chestnut Street that I would never have seen myself in. All the relationships and the experiences and the gratitude that's shown toward me kind of builds the gratitude that I have. And then after all of that, on the weekend, I get this little girl who's like the best. So how could I not be grateful?
Advice for aspiring entrepreneurs. If someone wants to build multiple ventures while growing personally, what psychological traits or habits should they focus on first, do you think? Or do you think that that's like case by case basis.
It's case by case, it's person by person. I'm going to use a word that is probably a little cliched at this point, but it's, I think, so on point, and that's grit. And grit cannot be taught. You either have it or you don't. And for me, I always had it. I was always a high achiever, but where it was really awakened was when we lost our house, because I was like, oh, wow, this is different. And so I didn't have a choice then. It took leaving that environment and going down to Baltimore City to realize that I really had more than I needed. Everything's relative, right? Whatever struggles I thought I faced was not what these kids were facing. But that was all awakened. And I think some parts of being a successful entrepreneur, they can't be taught. They're either in you or they're not. And real estate is a field where you see a lot of wannabe entrepreneurs because they see the shows, they see $1 million listing and selling sunset and, you know, all the stuff on TV. And they think, I want that. Well, of course, we all want that. I would like a Lamborghini, okay? But the thing is, what you see on TV, first of all, is not real life. And it takes so much work to succeed as a business owner. You have to, you know, you want to be your own boss, great. But if you suck as a boss or you suck as an employee, then being your own boss isn't going to work out for you. You really have to be disciplined and be willing to fail and get up and try again and take some risk, both financially and otherwise, and not give up. This business, more than half of the people that get their real estate license are out within 2 years. That's just the reality. I would say you have to be realistic from the beginning and talk to people that have worked their way up from the bottom and are going to give it to you straight and not sell you a pipe dream of, oh yeah, you're going to make $100,000 your first year in real estate. You're not. You're just not. So for this podcast, what is your goal? I mean, first of all, I hope that I helped you accomplish it.
Share the light, spread good content. This is a content engine for me. I've been through a lot. Got to a very dark place in high school, and I made a 360 recovery, and now I'm an entrepreneur, and I don't have a boss. And people, you know, I just hired my first employee, and it feels amazing. So you built relationships with certain people along your journey. Like you went from employee mindset to CEO mindset and to being a business owner. What was that shift for you?
I don't even think I saw the shift coming. I didn't expect to do much with the real estate and business piece. I thought I was going to just come out and like be a lawyer and work for a firm and work with kids. I envisioned myself essentially being an employee probably for my whole life. That has been a struggle in itself because one of the things that a lot of real estate agents struggle with is the fact that we are our own business. Like I am a small business of one initially, right? And then eventually when I started hiring people, you know, a little bit bigger organization, but we are each our own small businesses and you have to run it like a business. You have to look at your numbers, look at your expenses, look at your taxes.
Hiring can be one of the most difficult things for a new entrepreneur because you get good enough to be up and running and then you hold on to it and you're like, no one can help me because I'm so used to fending for myself. You know, eventually you have a shift and you realize the more people that I can afford to hire, not only the more value and the more that I can output, but the more money that I can possibly make.
I'm a huge fan of leverage. If I can pay someone to do something, I'm so happy to do it. I'm not so concerned about like turning over my baby kind of a thing. My issue has more been hiring the wrong people. My issue is bringing my empathetic social work, rose-colored glasses approach to the hiring business process.
Would you kind of treat it like trying some clothes on at the mall? You might see something on the rack and it looks great. And then you try it on and you're like, this doesn't fit.
Yeah, no, I like that. My thing too is I'm really good at seeing all the red flags and then ignoring them and being like, yeah, that's concerning and that's concerning, a little bit about this, but yeah, I'll bring you on. I'm sure I can fix you. And the answer is no, I can never.
Would you consider yourself like an optimistic entrepreneur?
Yes.
Because like I think there is kind of like it's almost like Democratic and Republican. Like you have like entrepreneurs that are just like super like hardworking and they're super honest, but they just have a very pessimistic outlook on life. And then you have you who is selfless and optimistic, still sees the silver lining. Would you say you were always that way?
I would say no. I don't think so. I would say mostly it's just come from my work in the social work field where I'm trying to see the best in people. I try to see opportunity for growth and potential and work that. But what I've really had to learn is, and this is true in business, I've learned it in business, I've learned it in family, with my own kid, is you can only want so much. They have to do the work. You can have the best intentions and you can have the best resources and you can give them all the best advice, but they have to do it. And that's where the disconnect often is.